It seems like I've worked my whole life to make my wife happy, and it was all a waste of time. It hurts a man deeply to realize that all his efforts and intentions were in vain. After 23 years of marriage, I now realize that I didn't know the mother of my children. She always wanted something better. No matter how hard I tried, it was never enough for her. She made me feel like a good provider, and I was always happy when I could give her something. But she always wanted more. Sharon and I got married right after school. Sharon had short, dark hair. She was beautiful and had a great figure. Until recently, our sex life was good, and I had no reason to doubt her fidelity. I started out repairing engines, and today I'm a heavy equipment mechanic. I make damn good money, at least I think so. Our first life was pretty normal. Our first house was small, and when the kids came along, we moved twice to have more space. Now both kids are out of the house. Our daughter Sarah is married, and our son John joined the Air Force. The house was now bigger than we needed, but she still didn't seem happy. My parents died in a car accident many years ago. When the kids left, Sharon said she needed something to do, and of course that's when the problems started. She got a job at a property management company. Apart from a few secretaries, there was hardly anyone else there, and her boss was Glenn Sebastian. Of course, I got to know this guy. I didn't like him, and in the end, he started an affair with my wife, even though he was married himself. At that point, I just decided to give up. Why go on? The kids were grown up, and my wife was cheating on me. I decided to make one last attempt. Sharon, now that the kids are gone, I'd like to sell the house and move to Florida. What do you think? I'll find a job there, and we'll live well under the warm Florida sun. I'll pretend I didn't hear that. She didn't even look up from her morning newspaper. Every day, our conversations became less and less polite. Of course, the problem was with me. I don't know how to communicate with people. I can't convince anyone of anything because I simply don't have the necessary language skills. Sharon put up with it because she was used to it. Glenn Sebastian was the complete opposite. He always knew what to say and how to say it. It was easy to see how he had lured my wife into his bed. I think what I'm trying to say, Sharon, is that I want to take you away from Glenn Sebastian so I can get my life back. Charlie, Glenn isn't going anywhere, and we don't have a life to go back to. I'll work, you'll work, and we're not going anywhere. End of discussion. Although I had proof of her infidelity, I never mentioned it to Sharon. She continued to live her normal life, thinking I was too stupid to understand what was going on. With $2,000 from my fishing fund, I bought a detective's report and photos of everything that had happened. Sharon was still reading the newspaper when I left for work. That day, I quit my job. When we first got married, Sharon was very cheerful. We went fishing together, and I went to a few concerts to make her happy. We did little things to make each other happy. The children made our lives more complicated, but we still found time for fun. As the children grew older, I seemed to work more and more. I think that's when we started to drift apart. I wanted to save money for retirement. Sharon wanted to enjoy life. She insisted on buying a BMW, which I didn't think we could afford. It was easier to buy her the car than to argue about it. No matter how hard I tried, I couldn't keep her from Glenn Sebastian. I loved her, but I didn't love the way she treated me. So I gave up. Seymour Schlamp, my favorite lawyer, received the next $2,000 from my boat fund. I gave him the detective's report and the photographs. I signed several documents, including a power of attorney for the real estate, and asked him to deliver the documents next Monday. Today was motel day for Sharon and Glenn. They went to the same motel, the same room, at the same time, on the same days of the week. I didn't understand what Sharon found so exciting about it. They usually checked in around 11 and checked out at 2. I still had a few hours to prepare. Sebastian Holding owned several small buildings that it rented out, but its main income came from 2 old warehouses. Glenn had bought them for a song when the previous owners refused to bring the buildings up to code. No one worked in the warehouses. They were only used to store goods and other items for various local businesses. I was sure Glenn hadn't brought them up to code either. I spent 30 minutes in each warehouse tidying things up. then headed to the bank. I emptied my savings account, checking account, and money market account. After canceling my credit cards, I took all my cash and put it in a locker at the bus station. It was time to get down to business. The plan was simple: commit mass destruction and go to jail. I couldn't see how anything could go wrong. I pulled into the Desca Motel parking lot just as fire trucks were racing down the street. 2 large warehouses were burning on the other side of town, and all the firefighters were busy putting out the fire. Sharon's BMW was parked right next to Glenn's Mercedes. I parked my F-150 in the back of the lot and took the tools for my new craft out of the trunk: a glass breaker, an aluminum baseball bat, and a pair of side cutters. Precision and timing were important. Glenn could get a call at any moment that his warehouses were on fire. I had to hurry. I lit the rag soaked in gasoline and shoved it into the gas tank of my pickup truck. I had to run for my life because seconds later, the Ford exploded. It wasn't a loud explosion like in the movies, but more of a muffled whistle. It felt strange to destroy my own pickup truck, but I didn't need it anymore. In less than a minute, I slashed the valves on all 8 tires. I took my time walking around all the cars and smashed all the windows and glass with the emergency hammer. Everything went perfectly. The only problem was that the first blow set off the alarm on Glenn's car. Before he realized what was happening, I was already attacking the BMW with a baseball bat. I started by smashing all the panels. By this time, hotel staff and several guests had gathered in the parking lot, and it seemed like everyone had a cell phone pressed to their ear. I was standing on the roof of the Mercedes when Glenn finally came out of his room, pulling up his pants. He was yelling something at me, but I couldn't make out what. I think he wanted me to stop hitting the roof of his car, but I wasn't sure. I went back to the BMW and started hitting it even harder when the police finally arrived. Fire trucks were racing around the city responding to a major fire in 2 warehouse buildings, so they had to leave my poor truck to burn to the ground. As the police put me in the car, I saw Sharon looking out the motel window. It took an hour to process me, take my fingerprints, and photograph me. The photographer was furious because I refused to wipe the grin off my face. It was nice to finally sit in the cell and relax. Since I confessed to everything that had happened at the motel, there was no need for a long court case like on TV. They mentioned the warehouses a few times. I said I didn't know anything about them, and they quickly changed the subject. I'm sure they pieced it all together later, but at that point, they didn't have good communication. Once word got around the station about what I had done and why, the situation became a little more comfortable. The next morning, Sharon brought me the bail money. There was no money in the account, so she had to borrow it from Glenn or take out a second mortgage. I was pretty sure Glenn wouldn't want to put up 10% of $400,000. I could see Sharon through the glass partition behind the reception desk. She looked very angry. I knew she knew the accounts had been emptied. My watch, wallet, shoelaces, and money were returned to me. I was afraid to go out into the lobby, so I asked one of the guards if there was another way out to avoid hostile wives. He smiled a little, led me to the fire exit, pressed the alarm button with his baton, and let me out into the back alley. Free at last, free at last. After retrieving my money from the locker, I bought a bus ticket to Chicago. I didn't know where to go, but that's where the express was headed. I had plenty of time to think as I watched the rural landscapes flash by the windows. I was in a much worse position than before, but at least I no longer had a capricious wife who humiliated me. I had enough money to live on for a couple of years, given my lifestyle, but I knew that eventually I would have to find some kind of work to keep from going crazy. I had no idea what to do about income tax and Social Security. I didn't even know how to get a driver's license, but I knew I would have to eventually. After Chicago, I took on a series of small routes that seemed to stop in every little backwater town in the Midwest. We were driving through southern South Dakota when I found a newspaper that someone had thrown out. I was bored out of my mind, so I started reading every line in the paper. When I got to the classifieds, I found that I had read the same ad 4 times. Heavy farm equipment mechanic wanted. Room and board provided. Salary based on experience. Contact Leroy Summer. I had never heard of Mitchell, South Dakota. Even though it was late summer, it was cold. The sky was gray, and the land didn't look very inviting. It seemed like the perfect place to wallow in my misery. Fairfax Equipment Repair was located in a large building that looked like an airplane hangar. The sliding doors were large enough to accommodate the largest pieces of farm equipment. I never found out where the name came from, probably from the previous owner. There were no problems with the job. The living quarters were on the top floor of the maintenance building. They were Spartan and not at all comfortable. The pay was low for this kind of work, and accommodation meant that the room had a mini kitchen. The best part of the whole deal was my new roommate, Jorge. Jorge Toledo was born in El Paso, so he wasn't an illegal immigrant. He was a little older than me, but we were similar in build and appearance. He had long hair tied back in a ponytail and a large mustache that hung down at the ends like Pancho Villa's. I was clean-shaven, with short hair and glasses. I liked Jorge from the start. Jorge worked as a plumber and mechanic and was eager to find another mechanic like me. We were the perfect team. He also had a Mazda pickup truck that I hadn't seen in years. I think they stopped making them in the 70s, but this one still ran, with over 200,000 miles on it. After a few weeks, I settled in and began to enjoy my new life. We were both poor cooks, so we spent a lot of time in restaurants, mostly fast food and cheap diners. Jorge was an alcoholic. Leroy wasn't a strict boss. We could come and go as we pleased, as long as the work got done. Leroy handled the money and customer relations, while Jorge and I just repaired broken equipment. We enjoyed going on long trips and having late-night breakfasts at roadside diners. Life was good. 4 months passed. I was returning from a delivery, and Leroy and Jorge were waiting for me in the parking lot. When I parked the truck, they were both laughing. "What's going on?" I tried to sound serious. "Well, you had a visitor today. A private investigator from Philadelphia was looking for Charlie Terrell." Leroy seemed to find it amusing. Although Jorge and I were quite close, our relationship with Leroy remained strictly professional. We all got along well, but Leroy was very careful not to get too close to his subordinates. It was easier for him to keep them in line if he kept his distance. Damn, I was afraid that would happen. Is he from my wife or the mortgage company? He didn't say, and he didn't say how he found you here. Okay, I'm going. Where is he now? Jorge started laughing, and Leroy's chuckle seemed to encourage him. Jorge was drunk again. "What the hell is going on? What's so funny?" Jorge couldn't hold it in. Leroy told the guy I was Charlie Terrell. The guy looked at the photo and shook his head. We talked for a while, and I told him I was an illegal and bought a social security number and driver's license from a guy in Denver. He got really angry, but the idiot didn't even ask to see my papers. 20 minutes later, he got in his car and drove away. "You guys are a good team. It's fun working with you." Leroy was still giggling as he returned to his office. It was getting colder. Most of the work now consisted of maintenance rather than repairs. There was no need to rush, and we could work at a comfortable pace. The nights were getting longer and colder. The days were gray and dreary. I liked it. Jorge was drinking more and more. That weekend, I had a chance to take a break. When Jorge and I sat down at the Four Corners Truck Diner, I noticed a cell phone on the seat. Normally, I would have just given it to the waitress and moved on, but today I had a different idea. I asked Jorge to order for me and went outside. I decided to call Sarah first. "Dad, what the hell are you doing in Tulsa?" "I thought I'd call and let you know everything's okay." "That's great. We were worried. Mom's going crazy. What's this all about? Everyone says you've lost your mind?" "What did your mom tell you?" "Just that you were angry at her for working, and when she refused to quit, you went crazy and wrecked her car and her boss's car." "That's it? That's all she told you?" "Yeah. After she posted bail, she said you just disappeared. She hired a detective, but he couldn't find you. I think it cost her a lot of money. When you see her, ask her to tell you more. She owes you that. She's not telling you the whole truth. What are you doing in Tulsa? It says Tulsa on the screen. I'm not in Tulsa, but I think the guy who gave me the phone is from there. When you talk to Jordan, tell him everything's okay. How's your mom? You mean, besides the fact that she's angry and bitter? She lost her house because you didn't show up in court, and she had to move into a trailer by the highway. The insurance company refused to pay for the damage to the car, so she had to buy a car from a dealership that offered installment payments. The BMW finance company is still demanding payment for the car. She's working at Waffle House near the airport and has to take extra shifts to make ends meet. Every time I talk to her, she curses you to the 7th generation. Mom's not happy. Well, at least there's a little bit of good news. Dad, you're sick. You're not going to tell me what's going on, are you? Number. Don't tell Mom I called. If you want to know more, ask her. I think I understand. Call me when you can. I love you. I love you too. And I'm sorry I can't come. Bye. I decided I had a few minutes before dinner and called Seymour. Seymour, this is Charlie Terrell. What's going on? Damn, Charlie, you're in serious trouble. The bail company is looking for you. The police are looking for you. Your wife is looking for you. Wow, it's nice to be in such demand, Seymour. How's the divorce going? Everything's settled. Sharon was a little grumpy, but she signed all the papers in the end. If there are no complications, it will be final in 3 weeks. By the way, the house isn't yours anymore. Yes, I heard. Just out of curiosity, how's Glenn Sebastian doing? Mr. Sebastian left, disappeared, out of the picture. That's another thing that pissed your wife off. I think she was counting on him to help her out a little, and he left town. Apparently, he filed false reports with the insurance and mortgage companies about fire suppression system repairs in his warehouses. The insurance company knew it was arson, and he was the prime suspect, so they refused to pay. 2 people who had goods stored in his warehouses also couldn't get their insurance, and Glenn had to run to save his skin. By the way, I have to report this call to the police, you know. I thought so. What are you going to tell them? That you called me from Tulsa to find out how your divorce was going. Will that work? Yes, Seymour. I'd appreciate it if you didn't tell Sharon. When the divorce is finalized, can you send the documents to my daughter? No problem. Take care, Charlie. Glad you called. When I returned to my seat, the waitress was already setting the table. We hadn't finished eating when a huge truck driver approached us, looking for his cell phone. He was very happy to have his phone back and reluctantly agreed to take $20 when I told him I had made 2 calls. Everyone came out ahead, but I made Jorge pay for breakfast. He needed to stop by for a week's worth of booze before heading home. It started snowing and work slowed down. Leroy didn't mind, and Jorge and I spent more time relaxing. Jorge started drinking even more. I hadn't had a haircut since I left home. My hair was long enough to tie back in a ponytail. I grew a mustache for fun. Every day, Jorge and I became more alike. One day, when he was half drunk, I made him explain why he drank. I was married to a beautiful woman named Marisol. We lived in Waco. I had a good job and a nice house. One day, Marisol came home and found me in bed with her sister. I hated her sister and never understood why I wanted to sleep with her, but I did. Marisol threatened to cut off my manhood if I didn't leave immediately. I loved her, and I've been drinking ever since to numb the pain of my stupidity. I would do anything to change what happened. At least I had an explanation. I wanted him to quit drinking, or at least cut back, but he seemed to be trying to drink himself to death. I kept thinking about Nicolas Cage in that depressing movie. I was surprised he had managed to accomplish so much. My driver's license was about to expire. I didn't know what to do. I guess I could have just gone and gotten a new one, but I was afraid they would notify Pennsylvania and they would find me. Jorge had a South Dakota license that was also about to expire. After endless hours of drunken arguments, we decided that I would go and renew Jorge's license, putting his photo and signature on it. Jorge said he didn't want to drive anymore anyway. We decided that if I took off my glasses and combed my hair, everything would go smoothly. I didn't think about the trouble I could get into if I got caught. By the end of the week, I was Jorge Toledo and had a driver's license to prove it. Jorge said I should start using his social security number too. He wasn't a fugitive from the law, just running from an angry wife who probably wasn't even looking for him. Jorge started drinking even more and couldn't work half the time. Leroy knew what was going on, but chose to turn a blind eye. Finally, about 2 months later, just at the beginning of spring, Jorge died in his sleep. He was only 45 years old. Leroy reported it to the authorities, and we arranged for a cremation, as Jorge had requested. What happened next surprised me deeply. When the coroner arrived, Leroy helped him fill out the necessary paperwork. I tried not to get in the way until they were finished. After the coroner left, Leroy handed me a copy of the death certificate. At the top of the page was the name Charles Raymond Terrell. 3 days later, Leroy and I scattered his ashes in the wind. Since Jorge was not wanted by immigration or the law, all kinds of possibilities opened up for me. Leroy was busy looking for a replacement until we became too busy. I decided it was safe to get a credit card. I couldn't justify buying my own cell phone. Leroy had bought several phones for work to replace the old walkie-talkies, and they had unlimited calling. I traded in my Mazda for a Ford Ranger. It was time to call Sarah before she heard the bad news about my death. "Dad, you're in South Dakota. Isn't it great that we have caller ID? Don't tell Mom." "No way. I finally got her to admit why you left. I don't have feelings for her anymore. By the way, the divorce papers came last month. You're officially single." "Unfortunately, I'm officially dead too." "What do you mean?" "One of the guys at work died and the coroner put my name on the death certificate. You'll probably get a notification soon, so pretend to be surprised and upset, but not too much. You can tell Jordan, but not Mom." "Wow, that's really strange. I don't know how you managed it, but congratulations, I guess. No one else should know about this. I hope the police and your mom stop looking for me. I was cremated and my ashes were scattered in the wind, so there's no need for a funeral or ceremony. I guess it's a good thing my grandparents died at this time. I'm sorry I didn't insure you." "Don't worry about the insurance. We're fine, and so is Jordan. He just got another promotion and a new assignment. Do you have a new name, or would you rather I not know? Let's just say your father is Mexican-American now and leave it at that." "Dad, can Eric and I come visit you? I'm pregnant, and I really want to see you. I know you shouldn't come home, but can we come to you? We have a new Subaru Outback, and Eric really wants to take it for a spin." "Let me think about it. I'll call you back next week. I don't see why not, but I don't have anywhere to put you up. I live in a garage. I'm sure there are motels nearby. I'll wait for your call. Don't forget." I found a small motel nearby and let Sarah know. They were supposed to arrive in a week. Leroy still hadn't found a replacement for Jorge. That evening I had breakfast alone again, and it wasn't as pleasant as it had been with my old friend. On the way to the garage, I thought about him and how sad he had been when he died. I didn't like the idea of dying like that, alone. Leroy was waiting for me when I pulled up. He had a smirk on his face, which meant he had a surprise for me. I didn't want to know what it was. "You have a visitor." "Who could it be?" "It's a surprise. Your wife." The earth stopped, but not because I was in ecstasy, but because I was afraid of what was about to happen. All my efforts and all my problems had been in vain. That bitch couldn't find me, but she did. Slowly, I walked toward the work shed, and Leroy grinned from ear to ear. What the hell was so funny? I crossed the room and climbed the stairs. Without hesitation, I opened the door and entered. "Who the hell are you?" Standing in front of me was the most beautiful girl I had ever seen. Long black hair and dark eyes accentuated her Latin features. Although she was in her 30s, her body looked 10 years younger. Her question caught me off guard, and I quickly realized why Leroy had found it so amusing. Marisol had finally found Jorge, the man she had left 2 years ago but apparently couldn't forget. "You're not Jorge. Who the hell are you? Why did that bastard send me here and say Jorge would be here soon?" I pulled up a chair and offered her a seat. When she sat down, her eyes remained fixed on mine, as if she didn't trust me. "Would you like something to drink?" "Number, just tell me what's going on." Over the next hour, I tried to explain to Marisol how much Jorge loved her and how sorry he was for what he had done to her. I also had to explain how I came to be using his name and why. There was a little of Jorge's booze left, and we decided to help him finish it. I don't know if we were celebrating Jorge's death or our own misfortune. She stayed the night, and the next day we drove out to an open field where Leroy and I scattered his ashes. Later that day, she went home without getting what she had hoped to get back. She forgave him for what he had done, but she couldn't tell him until I opened the credit card bill. I felt sorry for her loss. In a fairy tale, Marisol and I would have loved each other passionately, but unfortunately, this was real life. Sarah is coming next week. At least I have something to look forward to.